Hello there, friends and sane persons. It's Wednesday, so it's time for another episode of Wednesday Whimsy. I'm Kyle, and Wednesday Whimsy is a short show I do every Wednesday evening where I talk about a board game topic, a top 10, or something else that happens to be on my mind that's game related. You know how it goes. This week, I'm talking about a game that actually kind of came out of nowhere, but ended up being a really interesting surprise, and that game is Living Forest. Now, I'll give you a little bit of background on Living Forest and why I say it came out of nowhere. It definitely didn't, right? It's been around, and in fact, it's been well regarded. Last summer, so every summer, a German jury awards a prize to certain games, and this game, Living Forest, won what's called Kennerspiel des Jahres, which is a game award, basically, for a slightly more advanced game. And it was this one. They usually pick three nominees and pick one of them to win the award. This year, this one, Living Forest, was up against a terrible game called Cryptid and an amazing game called Dune Imperium. And because it won, and I really think Dune Imperium probably should have, because it's a much better game. But because Living Forest won, I was kind of put off by it. I watched some reviews, and it kind of looked like a version of Mystic Vale, but maybe a less interesting one. And so I kind of just dismissed it, and I thought, I don't care about that game. That's not one I'm really interested in trying. But I decided to pick it up finally. It had an expansion coming out, and I thought, well, maybe it's time to take a look at this game. So I eventually did, and I've been playing it a lot over the last little while, and so I decided to talk about it today. So what is Living Forest about? Well, Living Forest, first of all, is not a cooperative game. That's kind of the first thing. But you are a forest spirit, and there's some evil forest spirit that's trying to invade and burn down the forest, and you are marshaling a team of guardian spirits to fight back against it, to build a grove of magical trees to repel it, and just generally to beat this thing back. And your opponents are also doing the same thing. It's going to be a race, and that's kind of how it is. I mean, it's not thematically. Look, there's nothing there thematically. It's just you're doing stuff, and the forest is alive, and it's slowly burning down, and you want to prevent that. But it really almost feels like it should have been a cooperative game, which is why I mentioned that at the beginning. But really, that's what it is. You're a forest spirit. You're trying to out-forest spirit the other forest spirits and get to 12 points in one of three ways before your opponents do. If you do, you win the game. So how does it work? And here the game is where the game kind of gets interesting. So I mentioned that it kind of reminded me of Mystic Vale. If you haven't played Mystic Vale, it's a game where you have these cards and you're flipping them over, and when you get to a certain number of these bad symbols, you bust, and then you don't really get to do anything on your turn. And this game kind of uses that same core mechanism. So in Mystic Vale, in Living Forest, what you're going to do is you have and I guess this isn't a very good picture, but you're going to have a line of cards. Here you can see this lovely gentleman is playing with these cards. We'll zoom in on his cards because I don't know who he is. So maybe we can't. Anyway, so you have these cards and you're going to flip them face up, and over the course of the game, I can't even get in anymore. I would really love to zoom in. Well, technical difficulties aside, so you'll have a line of cards, and you'll flip through these cards, and there's a bad symbol. It's this black symbol that's in the corner of some of the cards. Looks like we can't see it there. And as soon as you get three of them, you have to stop. And if you happen to get three of these symbols, you've busted. And when you bust, there's that black symbol. You can kind of see. This is, I think, the starting deck that you start the game with. So you'll see you've got a number of these black symbols. You've got 5 of those, and then the rest don't have them. If you bust, you get to take only 1 action, whereas if you stop before you bust, you get to take 2 on your turn. And you'll notice that each of the cards has a variety of different symbols on it, and there's 5 total. There's a water drops, there's green sprouts, there's this sun symbol, there's this whirlwind symbol, and there's this flower symbol. And those are basically, well, 4 of them are actions you can take. The flower symbol is one way to get points and potentially win the game. So if you take an action, there's a variety of things you can do. You can use your sun symbols to buy new cards and put them into your deck. The new cards are going to have different symbols in different quantities on them. There are also some that have a white symbol here that's going to cancel the black symbol. So, if you get some of those, you can kind of increase your chances in the future. If you use these water drops, there's these fire tokens that come out over the course of the game, and you can use your water to put out the fire. And you'll collect the fire token, and if you get 12 of those, that's another way to get points and win the game. There are these sprout symbols, and there's sort of a menu of trees. I think there's 12 of them. I don't know. There's a number of trees, and you can buy them for different costs and put them onto your own little player board. If you get 12 different ones, that's the way to win the game. There's this whirlwind symbol, which is kind of a throwaway action, but it's actually kind of important, where you can move around this circle, and where you end up might get you a bonus action. In fact, it will. And then there's this flower symbol, which I already mentioned, are kind of how you win the game. So you're going to win the game if in the turn in which you either at the end of the turn, if you have 12 different flower symbol or 12 flower symbols, 12 different trees in your grove, which is on your player board, or if you have 12 individual fire tokens. And if you do that, you win the game. Now, it's not quite as easy as that. Here's kind of a picture of the board, I guess you can see, where you're going to put these things. So when you place these trees, they're going to give you new symbols. So that, for example, now on my turn, I have access. If I had this, I have access to 2 additional water, 1 additional sprout symbol. So you can kind of build permanent symbols into your grove. You can get bonus actions by covering up a couple of spots. But also there's this swirly track thing. And as you go around the track, you'll see that there are bonus actions you can take. But each person starts with 1 point token for each of the 3 different victory conditions. And if ever somebody passes you, they can steal one of them from you. Now, you can steal it back if you pass them again in the future. But, you can, it's possible if you were relying on that for someone to come up behind you and steal that token from you, which would cause you not to be able to win the game. So you really kind of check for victory at the end of the round. That's really it. At the end of the round, you're going to see there's these fire tokens there. If there's more fire value than you have water, then you're going to have to take negative tokens, which are just cards which are dead spots in your hand that don't do anything and basically cause trouble. There's a resource you can spend to get rid of them, but they're annoying because they can kind of stop your hand short. There are also, when you buy cards from this line of animals, you're going to replace everyone, like from the top row is going to put out a 2 fire, from the middle row put out a 3, and the bottom row put out 4. So the fire is going to spread as you do this action. But ultimately, after so many rounds, the game's going to end and somebody's going to win. That's kind of it. It's a very, it's almost a basic premise, but it's got, this kind of an interesting mix of kind of a push your luck mechanism with a little bit of deck building and a little bit of kind of improving yourself, almost engine building. And you're going to see who wins the game. So let's talk about the game a little bit more in depth, some things that make it special and some things that aren't so great about it. So what makes the game special? First of all, very simple, right? The rules are extremely easy. You can get into it without really even explaining very much. The actions are very basic. It's use this to buy this, use that to buy that. And you want to get as much good stuff as you can and not have any bad stuff. And of course, it's Wednesday evening and I always get sleepy when I start recording. But that's kind of what it is. It's very easy to get into, which is why it's not surprising that it won one of these German awards, because they usually go to slightly easier games. So there you have it. Another thing that's nice about it is the artwork's pretty nice on the game. The cards have interesting illustrations, all of animals, in kind of ghostly form. And yeah, it's kind of fun to make a deck of a couple of them. It's also, it's a pretty solid experience. No point in the experience, even though it's easy to learn, it doesn't really feel like it's a basic experience. It feels like you've had a good time with the game. Everyone I've introduced it to has really kind of enjoyed it. I mean, no one will come away from it saying I hate it. If you like Mystic Vale, definitely for you, this is actually a better game than Mystic Vale, which is a game that is interesting but more gimmick than game, I think. This one uses that same sort of flip the cards mechanism, but does so in a bit of maybe a cleaner and more interesting way. So it's fun to play, it's easy to learn, and it looks pretty good. Those are kind of the things that are about it. Another one that I'll mention is that there's an online implementation. I'll get to that in my final thoughts, but that means that there's a way to try it more cheaply without sinking some money on it. And then finally, there's a lot of different things you can try. Right? You can pick at the start of the game whether you want to go for the trees, whether you want to go for the flowers, or whether you want to go for the fire. And then there's trying to manipulate how you get that. For example, the fire only comes out in turns where where people have bought a lot of cards the turn before. Otherwise, there's just one or two, and that's not going to be enough to sort of spring you to victory. But you can kind of manipulate it, because if you know you're going to be going first next round and you know you need 4 fire tokens, you can buy all the cheapest of cards so that 4 of the cheapest fire tokens go out there, and then sort of plan and play until you get a hand of several waters, and then stop at that point so that you can kind of put those out. There's that track that you go around. Normally you can't do the same action more than once on a turn, but by manipulating your position on that track, maybe you'll be able to. And then, there's a little bit of interaction as you kind of speed around past somebody and take their stuff. So there's a lot of different things to consider. It's overall a very enjoyable experience. So where's the but? And there's 3 buts on this one. Most people only have one. The first but is, while I said the artwork is great, there are these standees, and they are some of the worst standees that I've experienced in a long time. It's a piece of cardboard with another little slot of cardboard that fits in the bottom. It never stays together. I mean, I had to glue mine because those things do not stay together. They kind of look and feel cheap, and they're either going to fall over or you're going to pick it up and the bottom's going to fall out. It's just annoying. It was a throwaway idea. If you're going to use standees, that's fine. Not everything has to have minis or wooden screen printed meeples, but at least put a plastic base in there. I guess maybe you don't want plastic in your forest or something, but it really, the quality of those, and those are a major component of the game, the quality is so bad that it kind of knocks my opinion of the game as a whole down. And that was actually another thing that kind of prevented me from looking into it initially, was those standees just looked so cheap. Everything else is very well produced, but the standees are really kind of trashy, unfortunately. Another thing that kind of holds it back is that, how do I say this? The rule book sucks. The real problem is some things just aren't explained, like these victory tokens that you can steal. I know I've finally figured out what they do, but it's really not explained very well in the rule book. For a game that's so simple, the rule book kind of follows a tortured and convoluted path to get there, and it just makes the whole experience really less pleasant than it could otherwise be. And the third thing that kind of holds the game back is that, I guess there's 2. One is that I'm not sure how much replay there is. I've played it 10, 12 times now, and I kind of don't know that, although I did say earlier there's lots of different things you can try, at this point I've maybe tried them all and had a good time with them, but I just don't know if there's enough in the current setup to keep me coming back. Maybe if there were different trees, or different cards with different symbols, or a new action, or some sort of way to switch things up a little bit, maybe give the characters a special power or something. Something just to kind of make me go back to the well another time or two that might revive the game. But, at this point, I've played it a lot of times, and I don't know that there's that much more for me to explore in it. Now, I'll still play it with new people because it's very easy to teach and it's fun. But I just don't know that there's a lot of replay there after I don't know that anyone's going to play it 20 times and then say, I really still think I need to keep coming back to this. Although, to be honest, who plays a game 20 times other than, some people? But there's that. So anyway, those are some buts. And there was another one I was thinking of, but the turns. So you do flip over all your cards at the same time. That's nice. If you don't, the first time I played it, we didn't, and it just roamed on. But it's possible because things are always changing and somebody can take the thing you want to do, it's kind of difficult to plan for your turn until it's your turn. And even though the actions are simple and pretty straightforward, it is possible for someone to kind of get into an analysis trap and kind of try and overthink things, and that can drag the game down. This is the game where you want your turns to be really fast so that you're always engaged. Anyway, that's some of the negatives about the game. Nothing critical, but, things to think about. So what's my final rating? Well, I'm going to take the replayability issue out of the equation, right? Because I have played it, I don't know, at least 10 times. Let me actually check how many times I've played it. That's one of those things we can do. If I can find it, we've got Living Forest. Living Forest, I have played it 12 times. So, I got 12 plays out of it. That's pretty good. And, I'll probably get another 6 or 7 and who knows, maybe even more, especially when the expansion comes out. So I'm going to take that out of the equation. But when I add the positives and negatives, I probably come out as an 8 on this. So that's a good, strong recommendation. The game is a lot of fun. Everybody I've played with has enjoyed it. There's nothing wrong with the game. It looks good. It plays simple, and it'll work especially for families with not young children, but older children. I'm wondering what it says on the box. It says 10 plus. I think that's probably about right. The game is short and snappy. It does say 30 to 60 minutes on it. 60 minutes is a long game of this. To keep it going for 60 minutes is going to be rough. The deck building element is there if you like deck building, but it's also not prevalent, like a major thing. If you don't, you can ignore it. You can never buy a card if you want. It might be harder if you don't, but, up to you. So 8 out of 10. Now, I did mention earlier there's an online implementation, and I actually think that's very helpful for this. If you go on to Board Game Arena, I think it's in the premium category, which means you either need to pay for a subscription to play the game, or just go on and find somebody else, I think, who's already started it up and play that way. But what that means is you can try it for little or no money and kind of get an experience of it. There's a good tutorial there to learn how to play. And you can kind of experience the game with a couple of people and decide, hey, is this something for me, or is this something I can pass on? And I think that's a really good thing for this because, it's easy to tell somebody, go online and spend 20 minutes and learn this game and see if it's for you. It's a little harder to say, spend $40, wait 2 days for it to come in the mail, read the rules, and then see if it's for you. So there's that. But for me, it's an 8 out of 10, a solid recommendation. Now, I will say, up against Dune Imperium, there's no question Dune Imperium is a better game, but I'm not on that jury, and they always pick the wrong game anyway. So there's that. But anyway, I've enjoyed The Living Forest. I would enjoy it. I'll continue to enjoy it, even if, it might get a little samey after a while. But when the expansion comes out, I guess that'll change things up as well, too. So I guess that kind of... that's it. It's not a mixed review. It may have sounded a little more negative than I intended it to. I really like The Living Forest, and I think you might as well. But with that, we are at the end of another episode of Wednesday Whimsy. So I'm going to wish you safe travels, courage when you need it, and I will see you back next week at the same time on your next episode of Wednesday Whimsy. Bye-bye.